Greetings, Mr. Rogues here, reporting yet again from the old asylum. Now this is a video I've wanted to do for a very long time, we're talking years. And now I figured I'd finally get to it. I'm gonna rank my top 5 favorite Batman comic book artists. And of course let me know down in the comments which your favorite Batman comic book artists are, your top 5 or 10 or 20 or 100, whatever. Now let's get right into the list. Number 5. Number 5 is Jim Lee. Pretty obvious choice, I know. Now while Jim Lee is very popular, there are also a lot of fans who consider his art, yes, being technically good, but also kind of lifeless and artificial. I've heard people say that many times. Now, I can kinda see that, but I don't really agree. I do think that he does have life in his art. And even the people who claim this still can't deny how beautiful his art is. And that's really the whole big deal with Jim Lee's art, no matter what title he's working on. His art is eye candy. It looks gorgeous. So super dynamic and such incredible detail. Looking at a page drawn by Jim Lee, you'd think it took him a whole month to draw just that one page. Obviously it didn't though. So yeah, the guy is insanely talented. I love his Batman too. It's a very unique Batman. It's really the only Batman with short stubby ears that I like. He's the only one who's able to pull that look off. I love the way how he draws Batman's mask, and I really like how he makes Bruce Wayne's ears kind of visible under the mask. He's really the only artist who does that, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, this guy's wearing a piece of cloth over his head, so obviously the ears would be sticking out. Other artists, they make it seem like when Bruce Wayne puts on the mask, his ears just magically disappear somehow. He's also one of few artists who's able to make Batman look both very grizzled and tough as nails, while also being handsome and chiseled looking. Jim Lee is also great at drawing most of the Rogues Gallery. Now I don't like Jim Lee's Joker actually, I think he looks kinda bad, but most of the other Rogues he draws fantastically, like Killer Croc. Now, a lot of people don't like how he draws Killer Croc like a giant dinosaur, or like Spider-Man's the Lizard. I usually prefer Croc looking more human-like, but in this case, in Jim Lee's case, I actually accept it because he draws it so cool-looking. He draws such a cool-looking Croc that I don't really care that it's not my preferable design for the character. And of course, he draws the best, very best Poison Ivy ever. A super sexy Poison Ivy. He also draws a very sexy Catwoman. He was really the first artist to take the Darwin Cook Catwoman costume and make it look sexy. Needless to say, Jim Lee is very good at drawing foxy ladies, we all know that. He also draws a really great Harley Quinn. He takes the old classic, the animated series design by Bruce Timm, and makes it even better somehow. I would say he also draws a pretty definitive Riddler. Yeah, very few Rogues look bad by Jim Lee's pen. Number 4, Marshall Rogers. I would actually say that Marshall Rogers draws my favorite Batman of all time. I don't think anybody draws Batman as well as he does. I love how he makes Batman look less giant and beefy and more lean and muscular, kinda like a martial artist rather than a bodybuilder. He was also the first artist since the early Golden Age to make Batman look kinda spooky. I love how he draws Batman's mask and the shadow he puts the face in. And of course I gotta mention Marshall Rogers' Joker, a very definitive Joker. A lot of people think it's the greatest looking Joker of all time, at least when it comes to classic looking Joker, and I'm not quite sure, but I might agree with that. It's definitely in the top 3 for me at the very least. I mean, when you think of the Joker, especially the classic version of the Joker, your mind kinda wanders to the Marshall Rogers looking version. Just like Jim Lee, Rogers was also another artist who had great attention to details, as he put so much life and, well, detail in the backgrounds on his panels. He truly made Gotham feel like a real living place. Now, why don't I rank Marshall Rogers higher on this list? Well, it's because he really didn't work that much on Batman. He only really did that run, very brief run, with Steve Englehart in the late 70s, and a few other stories here and there. Other than that, it's nothing really. That's actually a big shame. He should have been a regular artist on either Batman or Detective Comics for a long time, for many years. Number 3, Kelly Jones. Kelly Jones is a kind of a love him or hate him kind of guy, and I am in the love him camp. Yeah, it's certainly an art style that's not for everyone. It's extremely stylized and exaggerated. So I definitely understand why a lot of people don't like it. Me though, I love it. I really like a highly stylized and exaggerated looking Batman world though. Kelly Jones's art reminds me a lot of the Tim Burton movies. It's very dark, gothic and bizarre and surreal looking. I absolutely love how Kelly Jones draws Batman himself. Well, most of the time. Bruce Wayne is a guy trying to pretend that he's some kind of supernatural monster. That's why he puts on the costume. And Kelly Jones is really one of very few artists who seems to understand that. He really draws Batman looking like some kind of monster. Really big and huge ears and claw-like hands and this giant flowing cape that seems to be supernatural. Now, Kelly Jones is kind of a hit or miss artist because in the same comic, some panels can look fantastic and other panels can look absolutely awful. Yeah, I will definitely admit, even though I love Kelly Jones and his work, I will admit that some of his stuff is really bad. His art is pretty inconsistent, but when it's good, boy, is it good. He also draws one of my favorite scarecrows, no matter which version you pick. He actually has 2 versions of the scarecrow. The costume is basically the same, pretty much, but he draws the mask in 2 different ways. He used to draw the mask as kind of a faceless scarecrow, and later he started drawing it as more like a skull. And I like both versions. It's a very creepy, spooky looking scarecrow. Creepy and spooky is obviously what Kelly Jones is all about. He easily draws the creepiest looking Batman ever. Number 2, Jim Aparo. A classic Batman artist who drew Batman for decades, starting in the early 70s. He's a really underappreciated Batman artist considering how long he worked on the character and how influential he was. And he's drawn a lot of classic Batman stories like A Death in the Family and A Lonely Place of Dying. He even drew several parts of Nightfall, including that iconic page where Bane breaks Batman's back. I will say though that Aparo's work started to drop a little bit in quality in the 90s. He was definitely at his best in the 70s and 80s. While Marshall Rogers draws my favorite definitive Batman, I think that Jim Aparo draws the most classic looking Batman to me, the most iconic Batman. When I think of Batman, what really pops into my mind is Jim Aparo's Batman. It's the same for a lot of the rogues, including the Joker. I love the way how he draws the Joker with that very elongated face and a huge chin. And Two-Face, he draws one of my very favorite Two-Faces ever. If anybody could draw the classic looking Two-Face, it was Jim Aparo. He always made Harvey's scarring more grotesque and bulbous looking than any other artist at the time. And he also had a penchant for always giving Harvey turtlenecks instead of shirts, which I really like. It's a very nice touch. And he draws a pretty much definitive classic Penguin. I don't think anybody else draws the classic Penguin as well as Jim Aparo did. Yeah, Bronze Age Batman just is Jim Aparo Batman. And now for my number 1 Batman artist, and that is Norm Breyfogle. Yeah. It was pretty hard to pick a favorite Batman artist, actually. And I might change my mind later, because yeah, it's very difficult to choose between these. I mean, they're all great, but they all also have some minor flaws, so it's kind of hard to put them in any specific order actually. But I feel, right now anyway, if I was forced, like with a gun to my head, forced to pick only one Batman artist, guess I'd have to go with Norm Breyfogle. It could have something to do with the fact that the first Batman comics I read were a lot of his stuff actually. A lot of stuff from the Breyfogle Alan Grant run. So there is a lot of nostalgia attached to his work for me. He is great though, you can't deny that. I love how stylized and expressive and dynamic he makes his art. He's another artist just like Kelly Jones, who loves to play around with Batman's cape and make it seem kinda supernatural, like it has a life of its own, just flowing in these extreme shapes. And it just seems endless, like nobody could actually realistically wear this thing on their back. It gets stuck in everything. But that doesn't matter, we don't need it to be realistic. It looks awesome, that's all you need in a comic book. Expressive really is the perfect word to describe Breyfogle's work. He makes the characters so expressive in the faces, their reactions, their different moods. Even Batman himself, Norm Breyfogle certainly didn't draw a especially stoic looking Batman. He made Batman express all kinds of emotions. And when it comes to a Batman cloaked in shadows, I don't think anybody does it better than Breyfogle did. Again, another artist who was very good at drawing the various Bat-rogues. Again, the Joker. Maybe my very favorite Joker of all time. Man, does Breyfogle draw a fantastic, insane, manic-looking Joker. And of course the characters he designed himself, the characters he co-created with Alan Grant, like Ventriloquist and Scarface, Anarchy, Victor Zsasz, Cornelius Stirk, etc. He draws them really well, they all look fantastic. If Jim Aparo is definitive Bronze Age Batman for me, Breyfogle is definitive early modern age Batman. And there you have it, my top 5 favorite Batman comic book artists. Finally I've made this video. Should have made it years ago, but now it's finally done and now you know who my 5 favorite Batman artists are and why. And of course again, let me know down in the comments which your 5 or 10 or a million favorite Batman artists are. And as always, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.